welcome to Tea and Strumpets, a Regency romance review. I'm Zoe.
And I'm Kelsey.
We're back today with Maiden Lane and talking about the book that we couldn't stop talking about last episode.
Yes, we are really getting into a groove here with these Maiden Lane books, and we're very far away from St. Giles.
Yoo-hoo!
Yeah,
we are at Heart's Folly this week.
We don't even go to St. Giles, which is great because Lord knows I'll panic as soon as I see it on a page.
Yes, you get a slight reprieve from that. I think we talk about St. Giles. I don't even know if we go into St. Giles in the next book, which I am 95% of the way done with my reread from that one right now. I put down the book to record this episode, so hopefully I can keep my book straight. But the book we are talking about today is Maiden Lane number 7, Darling Beast.
Yes, so this book is one of Zoe's favorites.
Uh-huh.
Spoilers, guys. It's one of Zoe's favorites.
I should also say this is, of course, by Elizabeth Hoyt, but let's make sure she gets all the credit that she is due. Today we have a history fact.
Yes, so there's a good chunk of this story that talks about gardening, and they need to get the garden up and running. And obviously, if you're going to plant a tree early on, it's going to take a long time to get the desired effect.
Yes, planting a baby tree takes years and years and years to mature and give you your garden, like you said, the effect that you want. And sometimes you have centuries, decades, years. Sometimes you have a few months.
Yes, and in this case, they've got less than a year to get the garden up and running again. So our hero gets to play with transplanting rather large mature trees.
And let's not forget that these books are set in the 1700s, so they don't have any sort of modern machinery to move fully grown trees.
Yes, and that is something that we will talk about a bit, or maybe I skipped that section. Anyway,
it's okay.
We are going to tag the blog post in this, so if you're really interested in reading more, I pulled this directly from the blog, and this is the Gardens Trust blog. I couldn't actually find a direct author. It just says the Gardens Trust.
Yeah, I looked too. They didn't have a specific person to attribute to this, but thank you, Gardens Trust, for this fabulous and interesting information.
Yes. So, quoting directly from the article, believe it or not, there is an early history of the subject, The Planter's Guide by a Scottish landowner, Sir Henry Stuart, first published in 1828. He begins his account by saying, "It is known that the Greeks and the Romans must have moved large trees, as it is recorded in their writings that when they wanted to designate something that was impossible or at least difficult to perform, they said it was like transplanting an old tree."
So cool.
Theophrastus, the father of botany, certainly records several instances of moving mature trees, including one of a man transplanting a pine whose roots he had levered out of the ground, although they went down more than 8 cubits. Don't ask me what that is. Pliny, we know it's Pliny.
Yeah, Pliny.
Pliny in his Natural History also shows that transplanting was a common and successful occurrence, noting, for example, that young elms are transplanted into the vineyard at 5 years old, or according to the plan adopted by some, when they are 20 feet in height. Seneca, too, learned a lesson from Aegialus. We'll go with that.
Sure.
A most careful householder who taught me that a tree can be transplanted, no matter how far gone in years. In Britain, moving large trees seem to have been well established long before Brown, with later 17th and early 18th century authors writing about it as almost standard practice. Sarah Couch analyzed the comments of garden writers like Moses Cook, Stephen Switzer, John Evelyn, John James, and Batty Langley in The Practice of Avenue Planting. They all realize the importance of preparation and getting the right balance between size and effect, generally lifting and replanting between 6 and 10 years old. All recommend lifting the tree with as much root ball intact as possible, or as John James put it, in their clod. By 1728, Chambers' Cyclopedia carried a long article on the subject saying it was now possible to transplant large trees without any danger, which puts us in time for our book. There's also a lot of really great images in this, and they show people like pulling out the trees and how they would go into the gardens. And there's a little bit more talk about Versailles and transplanting trees there. So the article actually goes into a ton of depths for and it's a fairly short read actually too. So if you want to know a little bit more, we will be putting the link to that in the description.
Yes. And the name I was trying to remember was Capability Brown. Capability Brown was a super, super famous garden designer in Britain. And one day maybe I'll do a little on-d about Capability Brown because there's so many incredible gardens attributed to him. And what a name. I mean, we talk about all of these kind of crazy names, and Maiden Lane is full of them. If you think about the make pieces, you've got Temperance and Winter and Honoria and Silence, and Capability would be right on in there with them if you think about it. So anyhow, I also think Capability Brown is an interesting historical figure. But that's not who we're talking about today. And we do have some tropes that are in this book that I want to mention. We have forced proximity. We have Beauty and the Beast, which is interesting because it's not a traditional Beauty and the Beast, but it has many Beauty and the Beast elements. It's really, really cool. Wrongly accused and class differences.
And our main characters are Miss Lily Stump and Lord Apollo Greaves, Viscount Kilbourne.
Yes, and we do have a trigger warning for this one. There is some brutality and beating and rape. I don't know, Kelsey, if you included rape in your synopsis, but that is part of it.
I did not include any of that in here.
Okay.
So we're good to go.
But I have a discussion point that I want to discuss about it in our general discussion. So we will talk about it in our discussion, but it won't be in our synopsis.
Okay. Yes, that is true. Yes. In this book, the last book actually goes more into detail of the actual beating itself. This book is more done as flashbacks. And so they're in the book itself. It's not as heavy as the other one. So it is. The beating is there and the rape was implied.
All right. Well, shall we get into our synopsis?
We shall. All right. We're going to recap on Apollo, like I just said, because we learned a lot about him in the last book. And the events of the last book play very heavily into the events of this book. So, Apollo was broken out of Bedlam after being imprisoned for 4 years for murdering 3 people. He is innocent, but his sister, Artemis, is the only one who believes him. In the last book, the Duke of Wakefield broke him out of Bedlam at Artemis's behest because Apollo was beaten almost to death. Apollo has not been able to talk since the beating 9 months ago. He has currently been hiding out at Heart's Folly, where he is actually an investor. He invested all his money before he was arrested, so he has no other capital at his disposal. So he is helping rebuild Heart's Folly by designing and building the new garden, although everyone thinks he's just a dumb, mute laborer. Perfect!
Lily Stump, also known as Robin Goodfellow, is a famous comedic actress in London. Asa Makepeace, who is also Mr. Hart, asked her to sign an exclusive contract with him just before the fire-destroyed Heart's Folly in the last book. Her old employer then blackballed her from all of the theaters in London, so she, her son, and their maidservant Maud are staying in the only intact area of the burned theater because they could no longer make rent. Her son, Indio, is 7 and has a dog, an Italian greyhound named Daffodil.
Indio is the first to discover Apollo. He tells his mother about the monster that also lives in the garden. However, soon curious Indio meets Apollo, and after Apollo saves Daffodil from drowning in the pond, Indio invites Apollo for dinner.
Lily is apprehensive of the large man, but she does find him oddly attractive. She's a bit concerned about this because she thinks he is mentally handicapped at first. Her son has named him Caliban. Quote, Caliban, the illiterate knave from The Tempest. Well, he supposed he could have done worse. Indio might have chosen A Midsummer Night's Dream and named him Bottom.
One day after meeting Caliban, Lily is working on her play, which her brother has told her needs to be finished in a week, when Apollo comes by. He sits to listen to her work through the dialogue when suddenly a man appears. It is Captain Trevelyan, who we've met many times before, who has been working as bodyguard to Lady Phoebe Batten and notices the strange errands Artemis has been running. As the man who originally arrested Apollo, he sets out to capture him once again.
Apollo meets the attack and Lily runs, grabbing Indio as she goes. Trevelyan is thinking his life is over when Apollo lets him go. In that act, he realizes that he arrested the wrong man for the murders. He tells Apollo that he will do what he can to see him declared innocent.
Apollo goes to Lily's house to make sure everyone is all right. He, however, is not. One of the shots Trevelyan discharged grazed him, and he is bleeding from the head. Lily and Maud tend the wound and put him to bed in their home. When Apollo wakes up in a bed and remembers the day before, he tries to get up and go about his business without the family, but Indio is already up, and they bond a little bit more outside in the most male way possible. Quote, Apollo tried not to let the compliment go to his head. Precision pissing was, after all, a sadly underrated skill among most of society.
Apollo is invited back in for breakfast, but soon leaves again to go about his work for the day. Once he leaves, Maud tells Lily she needs to be careful. Lily replies, quote, He looks at me in admiration, but not like those other men, as if I'm the object he wants to have for other men to admire. When he looks at me, I think he sees a woman he likes and wants to talk to. And I want to talk to him, Maud. I want to learn what he thinks and when his lips turn up, and what he sees when he looks at his garden, and what he'll be doing tomorrow and the next day. She stopped because she knew she'd lost any hope of eloquence. I can't explain it. I only know I want to spend time with him. When I'm with him, the minutes, the hours fly by so fast, I hardly notice. By this time, I believe, Lily has realized that Apollo is not dumb and knows how to write. So they've been communicating via his notebook.
Yes, this is correct. Thank you for that segue. Apollo starts his day by telling Asa that Trevelyan found him, and then the Duke of Montgomery, a backer and veritable snakes of a man, appears and also lets it be known that he is aware of Apollo's real name and who he is. It is a bit concerning that people seem to know all of these facts about Apollo, but he is not yet feeling threatened, and the garden is his only hope of future income. So back to work he goes.
Today is a big day. It is the day when they will be transplanting the first full-size tree into the garden. Indio and Lily have found Apollo during the day and stay to observe the tree going in.
Since Apollo is still acting dumb, he has to let the foreman take over the project using the notes he detailed. Everything is going to plan until a rope slips and the tree begins to fall. This wouldn't be terrible, except Apollo sees Indio dart forward for Daffodil, who is sniffing at the edge of the hole. Without realizing, Apollo shouts, Indio!
Lily is frantic with worry. Sure, all three are crushed under the tree as it slides, but Apollo manages to save Daffodil and Indio. Luckily, the tree did not land directly on top of them. Lily speaks with Apollo that night, and with his use of a voice now, he tells her some of his history, that he has a sister, and the basics of how he came to lose his voice. He does not tell her his real name, though. In the end, they kiss and would have gotten more serious if Maud had not interrupted.
Lily is processing all this new information about Apollo when her brother comes to ask after her play, which is not yet done, and they also argue over who gets the bulk of the proceeds. Her brother is the one who sells the play with his name and gets a cut of the money. With finances tight, she is arguing for him to lower his commission. Apollo comes across them arguing and hears Edwin threaten Lily, so he intervenes and physically hauls the man away, telling him he can return when he can speak civilly to his sister.
The next morning, Apollo is awoken by soldiers storming the gardens. He escapes, but barely. Lily is also awoken by the soldiers, and this is where she finds out some of what Apollo left out of his tale. Quote, "Be careful, Miss Goodfellow, you and your boy and your maid. Kilbourne is no more than a beast. He'd as soon kill you as look at you."
Now things get interesting and our setting changes. We are now at the house party of William Greaves, uncle to Apollo. It turns out that the play Lily needed to finish was for this house party, and it is also a house party she agreed to come and work as an actress thanks to the Duke of Montgomery. On Apollo's side, he is there because between Trevelyan and Montgomery, it appears his uncle may have wanted to get Apollo out of the way so he could inherit the title instead of Apollo.
Lily sees Apollo in all his aristocratic glory. She is glad to see him and know he is all right, but also mad at him for not telling her everything. His sister is a dang duchess, for Pete's sake. She is the illegitimate daughter of an actress and porter.
Apollo sneaks into her room so they can discuss things, and he can ask her forgiveness, and he can explain a little bit more of his life. But as it is a house party, we finally get a consummation. And then, very quickly, as they are going about the house party, we get encounters 2 through 4 throughout the entirety of the events.
The house party goes on pretty much according to plan until Apollo, who is pretending to be somebody else while he's at this house party, is caught searching his uncle's study, who he's never met before, so that's how the uncle doesn't recognize him. But his uncle goes running off screaming bloody murder.
Apollo escapes with the aid of Montgomery and awaits Lily at the meeting place he hastily gave her before departing.
Lily, before leaving the party, figures out the real murderer. It turns out not to be Apollo's uncle, but instead his cousin. His cousin is obsessed with the title not going to the, quote, mad side of the family, but it turns out that the cousin is the one that's mad in this particular generation. Lily arrives at Heart's Folly to meet Apollo and manages to save him from being shot. He, in turn, pummels his cousin. And then the father of Lily's son, Indio, shows up to claim his heir.
This is not good. Indio is not really her son, but her good friend's son. He was born the night his mother was beaten nearly to death, and his mother did not survive. Lily has been hiding him from his father and raising him as her own because the man tried to beat his wife, saying he would kill his first child because his new second wife that he got after the money's all tied up in that heir being true. So he wants to kill Indio, so, he's a bad madman.
Luckily, Apollo had Montgomery for backup, and Montgomery shoots Indio's jerk of a dad.
Lily's cavalry then appears, a little bit late, in the form of her brother, the Duke of Wakefield, and Trevelyan. They take care of the murderers, and
form of her brother?
Yeah, her brother Edwin
Her
comes
brother.
in.
Sorry, I thought you meant her brother, the Duke of Wakefield.
Okay. Her brother, the Duke of Wakefield, and Trevelyan. They take care of the murderer and would-be murderer, and the day is safe.
That night at the Wakefield townhouse, Lily finds Apollo in her room. Quote, "I love you and you love me. I might have been in a little doubt before this afternoon, but when you flung yourself in front of a pistol, it did rather clarify things. And since you love me and I love you, it is right and meet and wonderful that you and I become man and wife and spend the rest of our lives sleeping together and rising together and having masses of children together and living joyfully."
And that's the end. Except this time, we also get an epilogue about our current main characters so we can actually share it with you. It is 3 months later. Lily and Apollo are married. He has been living a free life and will soon be an earl because his dick of a grandfather is dying. The garden is taking shape and everyone is happy. Lily shows him his notebook that she saved the day the soldiers stormed the garden months ago. Quote, "She reached out and flipped the pages of the notebook until the last page lay open in his hands. She'd written something there. He bent and read, 'I love you, Beast. I love you, Caliban. I love you, Apollo. I love you, Romeo. I love you, Smith. I love you, Gardner. I love you, aristocrat. I love you, lover. I love you, husband. I love you, friend. I love you, you.'"
Oh, it's very sweet. Mm-hmm. It definitely gives me that feeling. So it's almost time for us to finally actually discuss this book. But first, shall we adjourn to the parlor?
We shall.
If you'd like to find us on social media, you can find us everywhere that we are at T as in Tom, N as in Nancy Strumpets. And those places would be Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube.
And if you are listening to us on YouTube, it's a great time to click that thumbs up and hit subscribe before you forget. Liking and commenting on our videos and subscribing to our channel is a really wonderful way to let us know that you like what we're doing and to help YouTube see that we're important.
So important, like the most important. If you'd like to know ahead of time what we're reading each month, you can subscribe to our email notifications via our website. If you subscribe, you'll be the first to know what we're reading. Plus, you'll get all sorts of extras, including exclusive content from each of the authors who join us on the podcast. We should have an author join us again soon.
Yeah, we should. I'm trying to make that happen. Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Sorry, subscribers. Also, you haven't gotten an email from me in a little while. And, I'm sure you're like really crying that one more email subscription is not in your inbox, but there's a bit of a reason and you'll hear about it in the next email update. So join us through our website, romancepod.com. There you can find episodes, the subscription information, more information about us, and other resources. So take a look.
And since we've been talking about liking what you're hearing, if that's you, we'd be honored if you'd leave us a review. Reviews on Apple Podcasts, Facebook, or anywhere else you can review us really helps other listeners find the podcast. This is a great tool, and we'd love to see some reviews. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay. So, Kelsey, thank you so much for writing this synopsis. I imagine it wasn't easy. I'm going to just say, I do not think that the synopsis does this book justice.
I agree. However, I was limited on time and I could not write the entire book.
Yeah.
So
no. I'm just saying, like,
kind of where
your
we're
synopsis. I'm not saying your synopsis is bad. I'm saying it doesn't it doesn't blah, 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 blah. It doesn't do the book justice because this book is wacky. Like,
it's, it's funny because it's wacky, but it's actually not. It's actually, I feel, very simple and straightforward. And yet there's I like it almost more because of that. Like, I think some of the other ones in this series, there's so much going on and there's so much dun, dun, dun. And it's just oh my God, can we get over it? But this one's nope, we meet. Who are you? I'm this person. Oh, I like you. That's great. I like you too. We're not going to do anything. Oh no, people are trying to get me. I must it just kind of goes along at pace and you meet people.
There aren't so many twists. And everything is solved pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there is the whole thing. There's they're at the garden and then all of a sudden I feel like I wasn't expecting for Apollo to get chased away from the garden so soon. But we moved to the house party. 4
encounters at the house party.
Yeah, we did. We needed 4 encounters. But then we needed this house party. Now the house party is kind of it's such a wackadoo thing. What? They're going to a house party? How is he not going to be recognized by his own family? Oh wait, he's never met them. Okay. They kind of are his uncle catches on. His uncle's do I know you? You look really familiar.
Yeah, because he's and even Apollo looks at it. He's oh, my cousin and I kind of move and act similarly, just naturally. So there is some kind of thing there. It is very interesting as far as how it comes out that this is the house party, which is also the one that Lily's supposed to be at. That just seems very random, which is also the play that she was writing. And I'm coincidence.
Oh no, it's all been manipulated by Montgomery.
Oh, I know, which is great. Oh no, it has been. And this is where you start to learn Montgomery and his manipulations. And he's very much a character where you can't decide if you like him or hate him.
Yes. And I can't even remember his book. I'm excited to get to his book because his book's
really great because it's a employee-employer kind of relationship, but she's just a badass. And I
remember her. I don't remember him and his story. It's funny. But anyhow, I think this book has all the best drama. So first of all, you've got Apollo who, has to kind of reveal who he is, but also he's mute at the beginning. So you have the beginning of this relationship. Do you remember what was it? Flowers from the Storm, where we also had another character who couldn't speak and was in the asylum.
I think that was Flowers from the Storm or something like that.
There's similarities, but the drama of him not only regaining his voice, so he was stepped on, his throat was stepped on during his
physical injury. So him actually being able to regain his voice makes more sense because he even says, he writes to Lily in his notebook that he hasn't tried in months to speak because it just hurt and he didn't want to do it and nothing happened. So he just didn't.
So him regaining his voice is like the best sort of drama, but the way he does it, like, because he's calling out to save the boy. Oh my gosh. It's such an amazing thing. And I also think the drama of the storyline about Indio. So Indio has one blue eye and one green eye. And of course, someone at the party also, the house party also has one blue eye, one green eye. Again, this is orchestrated by Montgomery, who's a dickwad. So you find out that that's the father, but then you find out right near the end that Lily's not actually his biological mom. Which
you don't even know that. You totally think that she's his mom. And like there's little hints about who the mom actually is. It's why she's not really into it's why she's hesitant around big men. It's why she's hesitant around aristocrats.
You think that this has all happened to Lily, right? Mm-hmm. But then you slowly piece it together that it happened to her best friend. And Maud says it in the beginning, remember Kitty, but it doesn't quite also because Kitty's name is Kitty, it doesn't at first, when you first see that and you have no context of having heard Kitty.
It seems like some kind of nickname,
Yeah. Or it almost seems like Maud could even be saying remember Kitty, as if that's Lily's pet name. So as the reader, you're really tricked a little bit into this I don't know, just this trusting thing. And you trust that it's Lily. But then when it happens, all of the pieces are there for you to go, oh my God, it was in front of me this whole time. It's such fun drama.
It's a fun drama, but it's also something, it's a third act reveal, which happens a lot in these books. But it's not a third act reveal that detriments the whole story. It just flows into it, which makes it even better because again, it's crazy and it's wonky and there's all these pieces at play, but it all fits so seamlessly together. And it just oh yeah, that totally makes sense. Yep. This is totally the right time for that to happen. Oh yes. Oh, he's there and he's going to kill. Absolutely. Totally tracks. It's just so funny how that all works.
It's an interesting, and I guess we should talk a little bit about our characters. So let's talk about Lily first, because I think she'll be faster, maybe. Or actually, did you get to share many of your general thoughts before we move on?
I feel like I did. I mean,
Okay.
I really enjoyed this one. I thought the pace of this one was really great.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I couldn't do it justice. I knew I wasn't going to, so I just went for brief and abbreviated. But
Fair.
As you saw, I did try to throw the quotes in there that were kind of the fun one about the precision pissing.
Yeah, that was
which
so
I
funny.
just thought was funny. But then some more serious ones. I tried to get a little bit more in there, but it was just a really as far as rereading it, because I reread it, but it was still fresh in my mind. But then to write the notes, I literally kind of had to skip and fast read.
Yeah.
Because that was the easiest way to get my thoughts organized and then put it all down quickly. Mm-hmm. And so, but it was funny because even quick reading, I kind of got swept up in reading it and I was like, nope, keep skipping. You got to you're going on fast here. We're not spending a day and a half reading this. You got to get this done so you can get this written, in 45 minutes tomorrow morning.
Yes. Well, let's talk a little bit deeper about our characters. Let's talk first about Lily. What did you think about Lily?
I thought Lily was really great. I think that she wasn't one of those heroines that kind of sparkles and shines right away, but she has this kind of quiet, this quiet dignity to her that makes you really like her. She cares about her son, but she's not super overprotective. She actually has to quell that instinct in her. But she is protective enough. She's she's smart. She doesn't get down. She knows she's living in the theater, but it's well, this is what life is right now. We're doing okay. She writes plays and she's totally good with it. She's knows her lot in life. She knows she's an actress, embraces that, but she isn't ashamed of it. And she's also just really steady, thinks Apollo is one thing, learns he's another thing, and then she's not like, oh no, how dare you lie to me? She's like, okay. Like, if anything, she's just mad because Apollo gave her not the entire truth, and that's really the biggest thing she's mad about. She's like, you could have told me then, but instead I found out differently. And then you left, and I didn't even know if you were alive. She's more concerned about the alive part.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree with everything you had to say. I think that she is really interesting. I think she's just like, she comes across as a really, really smart person. Mm-hmm. And a really like level-headed, like you said, person, caring, kind, interesting. There's a lot of dimension to her character. Like I said, with the finding out about Indio and their history with that, and kind of like in a way, just because of all of the details of how they came to be a family, like, and how fiercely protective she is of him, it just makes you love her more. Like, it just, you're just like, wow, she's really selfless. Like, mm-hmm. And she just took, this wasn't a situation she was in, but when it came to her, she took it on. And so like, I don't know, I just really respect her. Yeah. Also, a couple books ago, there was like a character who went with some character went with Griffith, right? Like, she went with Griffith. She was the brother's best friend. I think it was like the Duchess Hunt,
Lady Catherine. Yeah, it was. She like went Scoundrel into of my heart.
Yes, she went with the guy, the hero, like to this dark place and like didn't ask any questions, and I complained about it. So anyhow, there is a moment where, in my opinion, Lily did the opposite thing in this book, and I really liked it. So here is the quote. It was, oh wait, sorry, that's not the quote. Go back. No, I had it, but I clicked on the wrong one.
It happens.
So this is when she's thinking that Caliban is like, you know, just this dumb worker who's kind of like doddering. But what was more disturbing, there was a glimmer somewhere in the muddy brown depths that made Lily draw in her breath. It was a glimmer of intelligence, sharp intelligence, and it made her afraid. Because if India was right, if this man, this stranger, was not just a simple gardener, but was somehow in charge of the other gardeners, then he wasn't at all what she'd first taken him for. She was aware suddenly of how huge he was, how male. He was in her home with her little boy and an old woman, and they had no defenses. And so, like, I just really appreciated that, because I'm like, that is how you should react. And like, that is how you should, like, it doesn't mean that then you should kick him out and da-da-da-da-da, because obviously Lily doesn't do exactly that, but her senses are heightened, and she follows her gut after that, and is like a little bit more kind of, you know, suspicious of Caliban. And she finally is like, you can write. I saw you reading that. Don't give me like that comes BS. Out,
he's reading her play, and she's like, "Oh, I knew it."
Yeah.
She's like, "Who are you?" And then she like gets in his face. She's like, "Who are you, and what are you doing, and why are you playing dumb?"
Yeah. And then he says, like, Caliban will do. And then but they start to get to know each other then at a different level. And I was like, okay, this is the kind of heroine I can get behind. Anyhow, I really love Lily. I don't know. I guess I'd probably give her a 9.
I would say she is like an 8.5 for me. Like, she's super solid. Again, there's not a lot of razzle dazzle, I guess.
Fair.
But like, I've got nothing against her.
Yeah, I think I just have a major love for this book. I almost gave her an 8.5 too. It's funny because like when we were talking about the last one, I had just read this one, and now we're talking about this one, and I am just reading the next one, and I'm like really wrapped up in that one. There is something that really sweeps you away about these books when you're reading them. Anyhow, okay, so now we have Apollo. Wow.
Okay. Apollo's great. Like, when we meet him in the last book, he's like jokey, and even though he's been in Bedlam, Artemis is like, he's still putting on the jokey thing, but he also like, he gets beaten for trying to stop some nasty people from raping another inmate, you know? So he really has a good heart. And then even in this, like, he sees Lily and the kid, and he goes to Asa, and he's like, they can't be here. this is like, I have to be here and they can't be here because I need to hide here. And like, that's going to draw attention. But then like knowing their circumstances, he's like, fine, whatever. Like, I guess they have to stay. And he's always really cute because even though he's kind of like avoiding the boy, he's like, he's just a little boy. He can't help but be curious, you know?
Yeah.
And God, he's always saving the damn dog.
Yeah. And just imagine this big giant guy, like, and this little tiny Italian greyhound. It's so cute.
Yeah, no, like literally pick it up with one hand. Yeah, he's like, I hit 6 feet at 15 and then kept growing. Like, yeah. So
and
he's
this is
probably
the 1700s.
Like, yeah, but he's probably like 6'4", 6'5". He's tall.
Yes.
And he's big and muscular too.
Yeah, and you know, his nose has been broken a couple times. Yeah, I just love Apollo. I love the dimensions of him. I love the evolution of him. I love just all the interactions. I think it's really interesting when you have the kind of, you know, in the beginning, it's only kind of the actions, right, from him. And then it becomes the words with the actions. And I think the fact that like that speech that he gives at the end about how much, you know, I love you and you love me, like he's so eloquent and sweet after everything that's happened to him.
Yeah.
I love him. So, I mean.
And he says, I love you first. In fact, I was almost a little like, they finally say it in the end, but like Lily doesn't even tell him she loves him. Like he kind of tells her, I love you and I know you love me. Like, but I'm like, but she doesn't say it to you. She has to say it herself.
I don't know. He's just one of my.
No, but he's so sweet. He's like a gentle giant and he's really soft, but he has like, I mean, he's not afraid to, he's like protective. And again, I think his arc as far as who he is and his understanding, like he's not jumping to conclusions. He's not even, his life isn't dictated by anger. It's dictated by survival, which is so different. I think a lot of the characters have been run by hurt or anger. They had very negative emotions as their driving forces. And I think he's one of the first ones in this series where his driving forces are not negative, which I think is different. And I think that what makes him so likable and so easy to read.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to describe it. He's just also, for me, a hero and a book that I can never forget. He's super memorable. So he gets a 10 from me.
He'll get a 9.5.
Totally fair. Yeah, it's we're going to move on. I guess this doesn't really have a place, but I wanted to like kind of discuss it. Maybe a feminist recap. Okay, I'll go there. So do you have a favorite quote you want to share?
I do. It's a good one. I almost put it in the thing, but then I didn't. And it's okay because it's a good one. It needs to be in the favorite quote section.
Nice.
This is where she finds out he's there at the house party and she knows who he really is. And she's like, why didn't you tell me? I can't, like, you're an aristocrat now. That makes you different. You're not the same person. And quote, he says, quote, I'm everything you thought me. He whispered, his voice broken, the gardener and the aristocrat and the madman. I endured bedlam and it was a crucible to my soul, burning what I was before and reshaping me. I wouldn't have survived it had I not let myself be remolded. In truth, I don't know what sort of man I am anymore. Newly smelted, newly poured into some strange and original mold. I was still too hot to the touch for discovery. But I know this. Whatever strange creature I have become, I am yours. Help me, Lily. Unmold me and take what form I am in your hands and blow the breath of life into me. Make me a living being again.
I love that. I also had it highlighted.
Because it's just so beautiful and it's just a very poetic way to describe his trials and tribulations and like how he is and how Lily makes him feel. And I just really thought it was gorgeous.
Yes. Well, I have two little funny ones. And so this is just a quick snippet of writing of Elizabeth Hoyt's. The problem with writing witty dialogue, Lily thought bitterly the next afternoon, was that ideally one should actually be witty in order to write wittily. And I found that to be pretty witty in itself, because we've talked about this before when you have like a writer or a poet or an author of some sort in your book that you have to like write their thing that's supposed to be good or funny or whatever. It's just like, there's just no way to do it. And so I thought that that was really cute, like showing the author having exactly that moment of issue. Yeah, the next one I have is more of like a little bit of a, I don't know, a leading thing, just a moment of the Duke of Montgomery, because he's such a wild card. And I appreciated this little funny moment that he was having with the cousin who's actually mad, but who's also like title mad and, you know, bloodline mad. And so this is what the Duke of Montgomery says. He says, quote, "If that were done," drawled the Duke of Montgomery, "half the titles of England would go obsolete due to brain weakness. I know my own grandfather fancied himself a cowherd at times." "Really, your grace?" John leaned forward to see down the table. "Not a shepherd or goat herd?" "I'm told he was quite specific in his mania, and only cows would do," his grace replied. "Of course, there were those who said his affliction was the direct result of a certain type of disease, which I won't mention in the present company, as it is of an indelicate nature." Which we know he's referring to syphilis, but like, I just appreciate all of these. Like, first of all, the Duke is weird and funny. And like, I just appreciate that Elizabeth Hoyt is always adding in these little tidbits of kind of like real life and the gritty life and the hard and the disease. And it's just, I liked it.
Yeah, I actually did have a couple things like referring to like the Duke of Montgomery highlighted, because it's just, he's just a very interesting character, and we do get more of him, which is, you know, fascinating in its own way. So he's a puzzle, and we're gonna learn more about him as the books go. So
now, okay, steaminess time. Yeah, this is real steamy.
Guys, they have wall sex. With like a group of people behind it. He's like, can't handle it. Got to do you right now against the wall. Ooh.
So this is actually somewhere between this. I thought this was super steamy, but somewhere between this and the feminist recap, which I'll just say I think this is a supporter in many ways. But so speaking of our trigger warning of the rape, it was actually Apollo who was raped in Bedlam. And he alludes to it. He never actually like says it happened. Most of the time, it's like a flashback of him remembering the guard coming and unbuckling his pants when he was beaten. Yeah. And like he remembers that. And
he remembers that as also too, like, and again, it's implied or it was suggested because in the first book too, like there is that same moment where he sees the guard unbuckling the pants, but then he really starts fighting. But that's also like the trigger point of when he was most injured, because that was like when they basically knock him out. So whether or not it happened is up for us to decide.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting because he never brings it up to Lily, and like his healing from being raped isn't really like brought up. And I think I'm not sure that I'm fully remembering the book, but there is a hero who had also been raped in one of Kerrigan Byrne's, at least one of Kerrigan Byrne's books. It's definitely in the Victorian Rebel series. It might be the Highwayman. I can't remember if it's that or if it's the Duke with the dragon tattoo or if it's the Highlander. Honestly, it's one of those. I think it's definitely in that series. And so like, I think she handles kind of like the healing from that traumatic event better, where I think this one is like alluded to and then kind of just dismissed and not really healed from. I don't really necessarily have an opinion about that. It's just one of those things that I'm like, like, do I wish that there was some sort of healing from that trauma that was like specifically addressed? Like, I kind of think I do, but I don't know where that would have been, and I don't know how it would have fit because I like the way the story goes, but I just wanted to bring it up.
That's fair. I think that, again, I think it's also like the tone of the writers. Like, I think it's to, you know, Elizabeth Hoyt, like she gets into a lot, but she doesn't take it to that next step, versus like Kerrigan Byrne really like she puts you in it. Like,
yeah, it seems to me like Kerrigan Byrne has, and I am speculating here. So like, you know, I don't know her personally. I've had I've been lucky enough to meet her, and she's, you know, a really wonderful human being, but she's spoken about some of the traumas that she has had in her past. So she is familiar with trauma, and healing from trauma. And so I think that like she probably has as someone who has a personal experience with it, can handle it differently than maybe somebody who doesn't have personal experience with it. I have no idea if Elizabeth Hoyt does or does not have personal experience. I certainly hope she doesn't have personal experience. I don't want anyone to have personal experience with trauma, but I think having the personal experience probably does give you just a different perspective when you're writing it.
I think so too. And I also think that, I mean, when were these books written? Like
2000s.
Yeah, I know that, but like early, I think, versus like, I think that even just in the last 10 years, like what books are willing to go, what like the romance genre books are willing to go into and willing to discuss, I think that has changed significantly. So I think that like we want tragic backstories, but at this time it was like they can't be too tragic. We need them to be a little blurry around the edges versus like, no, we want to actually get into the trauma and like really tell you what happened.
Fair, totally fair. And this was just because I was curious. This is published 2014, so more recently than I would have thought. Also, I don't appreciate its Goodreads rating. Everyone is crazy. I don't know.
What is the Goodreads rating?
It's 3.9. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? All right. Well,
I mean, a 3.9 would make me pick up the book. If it's below a 3.5, I'm like, should I? It's probably not that good.
Yeah. So let's get to our final book rating. But quickly, I will say, I think this book is a supporter. You've got strong Lily and all the stuff with Kitty and all the stuff.
And her brother announces her as the actual playwright without nary a fuss.
Yes. And just stuff between Artemis and Apollo and all of I just think people in this book are helping each other out in a really positive way. I find this book to be very feminist.
I agree with that 100%. All right, Zoe, what are you going to rate this book?
This is a 10 for me. I actually don't think this book is perfect, but it's one of my favorite books, which there's something about it that like I will always know this book, remember this book. I love this book. I love sitting down and reading this book. Every time I sit and read it, I'm like, oh, this is just a fabulous book. It is so fun. I love so many things about it. I can't even articulate them. There's just a feeling. And so that's why it gets a 10 for me.
Perfect. I'm going to give it a 9 because it's really high. It's definitely one of my favorites of the series for sure.
Yay! It's memorable, and listeners, I hope that you love reading it too.
Excellent. All right, so we are making our way through these books. It's very exciting, and they're going to get better and better from here. But
really?
I mean, I don't know if they're going to get better and better. There's always already at a 10, but I mean, like, they're not getting worse from here. I'll say that.
Yes.
But we're going to take another break. So we got 2 of them out. We're going to maybe finish the series this year. Who knows? There's only 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 5 more books left in this series. So we can sprinkle them in. We're only a quarter of the way through the month or the year. God, I don't even know.
Kelsey, don't forget there's a bunch of novellas that are 0.5s in there, so...
I'm not counting those, Zoe, okay? I'm not counting them. It's too many.
Yes, and for the novellas, when we do get to them, I think we probably won't do a formal synopsis. We'll just be doing like a telling each other what we remember synopsis so that we can get those out to you guys sooner rather than later. And we've actually already done one of them. So there's that. But next time, we're going to be reading a patron choice again, and this is going to be The Last Hellion by Loretta Chase, and this is suggested to us by our patron, Catherine. So thank you, Catherine, for your suggestion. We're looking forward to reading that. And we'll be back at you very soon. If you have a moment, we would super appreciate it if you rate and review the podcast anywhere you can do that, or tell a friend, because that is how we get found. So thank you again, everyone, for listening, and join us next time as we read The Last Hellion by Loretta Chase.
And may all your ever afters end happily.
A cat behind you in the frame. I'm sorry. I just have to stop because there's a cat and it's pawing at the door and it's
excuse
so cute.
me, the cat would like to leave. One moment. Sorry, Fred.
Kelsey's switching animals. So the dog is coming in and the cat is going out. It was a very cute little tableau.
Okay, now that all the animals are situated. I exchanged a cat for a dog, but that happens.
Yeah, I've got a dog here behind me, and hopefully our dogs will enjoy our discussion today.